Welcome to the Meta-Averse podcast. My name is Noah Kravitz. This is episode 4. Coming up on the program, Adam Chung and Pip McQuarrie from Supplier. The Supplier UK stopped by ostensibly to have a conversation about sneakers and NFTs, but really we get into all facets of brand building, customer loyalty, what it means to be a customer and what loyalty means in this day and age online. We talk about music, we talk about art, we talk about creators, NFTs, of course, and what all of this means going forward, whether you're in sneakers, in fashion, in music, or any line of work where you're looking to reach, especially the younger generation who's digital native, who's grown up on the internet and now moving into Web3 and blockchain and the metaverse. What you need to do as a brand, really, to reach your next audience and to build loyalty, and also what community looks like in the internet age. So stick around for that. We'll get right to it, but a quick note, 2 episodes this week, dropping another episode on Thursday. So go ahead and subscribe right now and you won't miss that. Also, the newsletter, you can subscribe on Substack, Meta-Averse.substack.com. You can sign up there. You'll get the newsletter, you get the podcast. Just sign up for the podcast, wherever you like, wherever you get your podcasts. You know how to do it. And if you're enjoying the show, please take a moment to tell your friends, first of all. But also, if you're so inclined, drop a rating, drop a review. It helps us grow. We appreciate it. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find Meta-Averse. All right, let's get right into it. Adam and Pip from the Supplier. All right, Adam and Pip from the Supplier are here. Guys, I'm super excited about this. I am, as you both know, I'm a longtime sneaker fan, but also there's an old connection that resurfaced here, which is how I roped you guys into coming on the program. And I am really excited to honestly, more to listen than to talk with what's going on in the sneaker community, which is sort of in some ways kind of an entry point to fashion and culture, kind of larger and touching on music and, what's going on in sort of the generation of folks who are making all of this stuff happen. So really excited to get your perspective and learn from you and hear about what Supplier is doing. So with that, here today with Adam Chung, who is the editor-in-chief of the Supplier, and Pip McQuarrie, the blockchain and cryptocurrency manager. Gentlemen, welcome, and thanks for making the time to come on the Meta-Averse podcast.
Thank you.
So let's start out, and Adam, you've got the EIC title, so I'm going to put you on the spot first. Tell the audience a little bit about what the Supplier is and what the content arm, as editor-in-chief that you oversee, what you guys are doing on a day-to-day basis.
So the Supplier was started by our CEO, George Sullivan, back in 2013 or 2014. And it's basically a sneaker website where we work with a lot of retailers, whether that's in the UK or in Europe. And we pretty much give them a gateway to sell their sneakers. And over time, we've become a publishing website. We've done a lot of different things with different technologies we've developed. And the company's grown so much over the past few years. I remember when I started, which was 5 or 6 years ago, the company was 5 people strong. And now we've got 50, 60 people in the team. Yeah. So it's growing. It's growing so quickly all the time. And we all share that common passion of just loving sneakers and loving sneakers and streetwear. So we're really excited to be able to speak to you about it today.
And, not to get off topic here, but the Air Trainer 1 Chlorophylls just were re-released as a retro, my favorite sneaker of all time. So, we could just go off topic and talk about that all day. John McEnroe, wherever you're at, shout out. So Supplier you're not a retailer per se. Do you guys sell anything directly, or it's more of kind of a online sort of curated clearinghouse kind of thing?
So we work with retailers who they sell the sneakers, so we don't sell anything directly.
Cool. All right. And Pip, as the blockchain and cryptocurrency manager, what's your day-to-day role like?
So I joined the company 6 months ago, and I guess around that time, I guess you could say that the company maybe was transitioning into like a tech company. So actually, the development team is probably the biggest part of the company. So they've released various products on the Soul Supplier, which are all about personalization and things like that. And what they were conscious to do when I was hired was try and modernize the way the company operates and try to make sure that the company, stayed ahead of the trends and kept moving on. And obviously Web3 and blockchain was one of the industries that was kind of growing at such a rate at the time that they were really conscious to kind of try and explore it. So yeah, it's a case of trying to modernize and to stay current, because the sneaker industry at the time, or it is now, was experiencing supply chain issues, and various different retailers were having various different problems, especially with what happened with COVID. So the landscape at the time, and this is going back till last August, the landscape at the time, it was fairly uncertain. And so now we've got a few projects on the go, but yeah, it's kind of like how there's a real difference between, we think anyway, in the way that e-commerce may transition in the future. So my job is to kind of make sure that we sort of like stay in that sort of lane, and we don't end up fizzling out, basically.
So you guys have, as you alluded to, a bunch of things going on, future forward looking things, one of which there's a new it's an NFT Twitter channel that you guys recently launched.
Yeah
So let's, if you would just get into that a little bit.
So this is actually kind of one of those happy coincidences, in the sense that I wanted to do something like this all the time, because I think it was important that we had a presence. And it just so happened that Adam was really into NFTs, and there's two other guys. One of the content writers, Raf, was really into NFTs, and then the main person who handles Twitter, the other Twitter accounts, was also really interested in space. So it was almost perfect that we could coordinate and start this Twitter account. And we're really sort of just like excited about presenting to our community the types of projects that are going on that aren't always sneaker related, but they do have they are tied in terms of the interests of the people. There's a lot of collectability, there's a lot of community stuff, there's a lot of charity work as well. So it's kind of like, I feel like it's a natural progression for the Soul Supplier, but it's quite new to people.
What's the handle?
It's at the Soul NFT.
The Soul NFT on Twitter. Excellent. So there's a lot here. As a jumping off point, maybe we can set the stage to, and as you said, it's not all about sneakers. It's there are different entry points to these cultures that kind of overlap, and there's a lot that's happened in the past couple of years, in particular with people being stuck at home because of the pandemic, and looking to online communities. And there's a lot that ties into what's happening, coming from that. But maybe to take it back even a step further, just to sort of start. Can either of you guys explain just a little bit about this idea of collectability and community and hype that is part of sneaker culture, and how sneaker culture and the whole commerce aspect of sneakers and the reseller market has developed over the past, I don't know how many years. For me, I've always been into sneakers, but I started kind of repaying attention, 5 or so years ago. But maybe just kind of a little primer for folks on what sneaker collecting, is all about, and how that maybe plays into what we're going to talk about with NFTs and the Meta-Averse and all that.
So with the sneaker community, like when I started at Soul Supplier, I actually found the job role through a sneaker community on Facebook. Mm-hmm. So the sneaker community has been around for decades and decades and decades, but it's starting to kind of seep into the mainstream. Like, I don't know if your audience can see, but behind me you can see some of the sneakers that I've collected over the years, and it's kind of like, well, the Soul Supplier has seen the ebb and flow of like the entire industry over the past few years. But one of the biggest things that makes the sneaker community so exciting and so enticing is just how passionate people are behind certain models, whether it's like an Ultra Boost, for example, which is quite modern, or like a 1985 Jordan. people have so much to talk about these sneakers, and I guess that's something that's been like normal, like through the start of the time, like things like Pokemon cards and stuff like that.
Right, right.
I remember collecting them as a kid, and I was so passionate about these cards, and I love sharing my passion about it. And all of a sudden, all these young guys who were in the sneakers started to make money from selling these sneakers because people were getting more and more excited, and that's where the resale market comes in. I remember one of the first places that you could buy and sell sneakers online was eBay, and eBay can be full of like the fakest of fakes, and that's how companies like StockX and Goat are starting to they're trying to get into that market, and they're doing it so really successfully. And it's become like a multi-billion-dollar industry, just the resale market, and that's happened over the last 2-3 years, and like there's no stopping it anytime soon.
I think from the outside, it's easy to look at something like the sneaker resale market or something like the NFT market and just see the dollar signs and just sort of think about, this JPEG of an ape sold for millions of dollars. This old pair of sneakers that I can't even wear anymore because, they're 40 years old at this point, just sold for, how many dollars. And what is happening with this? Is it just this kind of artificial asset? But to your point, it's the passion of the people in the community, that's been there for a long time, and people collecting these old sneakers that, are starting to be retroed now, by re-released is what I mean by retroed, by, the Nikes and Adidas and other big companies of the world. But the people who have these original sneakers and, back in the day, talking about all the lengths that they went through to get a pair or to find somebody who had a pair after, they were all sold out or that kind of thing. And so there are these market forces of scarcity and, supply and demand that go into it. But behind that all, there's this huge community of folks who this is, this is what they like to do. And they find other people who do it. And it's as much about, barstool conversations, if you will, over, which is better, the Air Max 1 or the Air Max 90, as much as it is about the headlines you see about how much a pair sold for, on auction at Sotheby's. Pip, is there something like that happening now in the NFT world, that you're seeing a parallel, or is this just me as an outsider kind of trying to make sense of it?
Well, I would say there is. The way I see sneakers, and Adam's got much more sort of experience in it than I do, but they are essentially just cultural artifacts, of history So I think that what we're seeing now with NFTs is there's a viewpoint amongst people that they are sort of internet, cultural artifacts, digital cultural artifacts, So the NFTs that we're seeing now, like the Bored Apes and the CryptoPunks, the most popular NFTs, they are seen as the first types of their kind, the first popular NFTs of their kind. So as on the blockchain, these types of essentially digital assets, they will never die. They will never, get deleted. They live on forever as long as the blockchain, is there, which it will be. So I think very much people are kind of starting to see, well, we haven't really got a history of the internet. And now we kind of have a history because we have NFTs. The famous example is, Jack Dorsey selling his first tweet,
right,
as an NFT. So this is almost like, digitizing, little pieces of internet culture into artifacts, which are now being, traded like assets, a little bit like sneakers. So I don't think people directly think about them like that. I just think that they are essentially like that. And it's the same way that I personally view sneakers as well. There's a couple of sneakers that I love basically, and I always get, kind of like ridiculed in the office because I always wear Reebok Classics, plain white. And that's because when I was younger, it was the sneaker that everybody wore where I lived.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe it was because it was, relatively cheap. And it was the one that you could convince your mum to buy you.
Yep. Totally. It's important, man, when you're a kid. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's what, so I wear them. And I think they look good with jeans as well, but yeah, so I wear them, but because they kind of mean something to me more than I guess, Hirachi does,
Right. You've written a series of pieces on the Soul Supplier site, getting into, just kind of laying some groundwork. They're great pieces for folks who want to just learn more about the underpinnings of what's going on. Highly recommend. You've got stuff up there about the Sneaker's Head's Guide to NFTs, about NFTs in the music community, and then some pieces about, there's a piece about what Adidas is doing in particular. And I want to get into that a little bit about how some of the shoe companies are starting to make some moves in the space. There's the Adidas piece you wrote. There's, I say obviously, but for folks who follow the space, Nike made some waves when they acquired a company called Artifact not too long ago. That's an NFT. They specialize in creating NFTs. So can you talk a little bit about what some of these larger companies have been doing or starting to do now, and how you think this might impact the community?
So it's difficult to know, kind of to track, exactly how this started. I think, on a basic level, I think there's a whole new market that is there to be explored. And I think that they've recognized that. And it's almost allows them to expand really quickly and scale really quickly without having the problems that they have at the moment, which are, sustainability, supply chain issues and things like that. So they can kind of have a presence without selling any physical products, which allows them to essentially reach more customers at a quicker rate. So I think that is part of what it is. But also I think that, these brands are very, very tied into our culture. Mm-hmm. And our community and culture have kind of moved online. So I think that there's a few things going on. I think that Adidas has more of an idea of what they're trying to do, whereas I think Nike are more looking and experimenting. Like they've bought Artifact, obviously, and they had a presence in Roblox a little bit. But I still think that they're trying to work out exactly how they want their presence to be. Whereas Adidas is full on. They've invested in Yuga Labs. They have a Bored Ape. They are really connected with the space. So I think there's kind of, I think that, I don't think it didn't seem to me when I spoke to Adidas that they like the philosophical elements of the metaverse and Web3 and stuff like that. They kind of like mirror the ideals of the brand. But I don't think that there was five guys sitting around a table, drinking brandy and saying, "Oh, let's explore this area." I think it's a real easy way for them to keep their own brand identity and explore it in a different way that isn't just tied to physical products. And I always use the example of, like you spend more time, you interact with more people online than you do in person. So the idea of not representing yourself in a certain way with an NFT profile pic or with, if it's in a metaverse, for instance, wearing something like, Adidas or something like that. I don't think it's that much of a stretch, that's how we wear clothes in general in real life. They kind of say something about your personality. So if you think about the fact that we interact with more people online on a daily basis than we do in real life, then I think you can understand why there's a whole sort of personality crisis going on with people who are online and how they want to portray themselves is becoming more important.
I think for me, being a little bit older than you guys, and a little bit older, I think than a lot of the people, some of the people anyway, when we're talking about the culture. My real eye opener was sometime over the past couple of years watching my younger son playing different games, but Roblox is the one that really jumped out, and he got into cars, and he was doing all he could to accrue enough Roblox to buy they have funny knockoff names, I guess, so they wouldn't get sued, but to buy a Bugatti, to buy a Lambo, to buy these different cars so that he could drive around in them in the metaverse in Roblox. And for me, that was kind of right. Like, this is what he's doing, and this is, what's in this reality, digital, wherever. He can't go out and, buy a physical Lamborghini and drive it. Even if he had the money, he's not old enough to drive a car in California where he lived, but he can do it here. And even though it might sound obvious, for me, that was kind of a little light bulb moment of right, this is where he's hanging out. He's playing the games, he's doing it on his own. He's interacting with other people's avatars. Sometimes he plays with his friends and they have a FaceTime chat going while they're doing it. And so presenting himself, the clothes, the car, whatever it is, it makes sense. And so from that perspective, it starts to make a little more sense to me why, people would spend however much they're spending for an NFT to use as a profile pic, for a pair of digital trainers to wear. Is that what you're seeing and getting back as well? Or is there a different thing happening that's kind of motivating people to, and I hate to bring it back always to financial terms, but it's kind of the easiest to quantify, to spend, physical money on digital goods?
I very much think so. I kind of would twist it on its head, and I would say that it's a lot to do with the brands trying to reach potential new customers in a way that, I think that they're not necessarily worried, but I think it's a conscious decision to try and reach new customers and so that's why they do things like Fortnite skins and things like that. It's a way of them universalizing their brand to like a younger generation who are into completely different things, live a completely different life than even people who are 10 years older. So, and with Fortnite, I think that was the kind of like the big moment when brands realized that customization and is so important to young people, and the way that they walk on the way that they are portrayed in games and things like that, is actually a really, really profitable industry. Which is why NFTs are probably as profile pics at least are such a a high revenue industry as well. I don't think people really realize that actually the way that you are portraying yourself online is so important. And also I think it goes back to when you are interacting in games, a lot of the time you're anonymous, or at least so. How do you kind of show your personality without showing your face or without showing your name, or where, and maybe you kind of want to take on a different personality. And I think these are the tools in which people are using that to kind of do that.
And do you think people are gravitating toward, I think there's something interesting to me that you said about the brands doing this to try to reach the younger consumers, the younger people online who maybe don't already have a connection with the brand. So like you said, he twisted, but my thought was like, oh, I can't get a pair of Chicago 85 Jordans in the real world. But if Nike's dropping a digital pair that I could get access to, well, then that's kind of the next best thing. But if I'm hearing you right, it's even beyond that to Nike and the other companies trying to reach folks who have no connection to those old Jordans, or not necessarily even a connection to Nike at all. And this is kind of the inroads is in the digital world first.
Yeah, I think, I'm sort of speaking for them, but I think that they are very concerned, it seems to me at least, about gaining new customers as opposed to, catering for their existing customers. I think that's the big battle they're having with each other is, who can reach new customers as quickly as possible. And when you've kind of covered, the kind of Western Europe and America and things like that, there's making inroads into other markets that aren't as huge is much easier through things like Fortnite and Roblox, things like that. It's a much easier strategy, and gaming itself is one of the biggest industries, and it's growing exponentially year on year. So I think it's very, very natural for them to want to explore this area. I think so.
So can you walk us through, and not to put you on the spot here as the spokesperson for any of these other entities, but can you walk us through an example of a drop, of an NFT drop, or some sort of a digital drop that you've seen recently that's been successful?
Oh God. Okay. Well, I'd say the most successful one that I've seen recently is probably the Adidas Originals drop.
Okay.
So they did three things. They did what's called a whitelist, which means that you can you have prior access towards to buy the NFT, right? So whitelists are quite important because you can get a sense of how many people actually want to buy the product. And they did it three ways. They dropped a proof of attendance protocol, a POAP or POAP, it depends how you say it. in one of their apps, and whoever
So
had that app,
you can say, hey, like I'm out here saying Adidas like an American. So, yeah, you've got the Adidas going. You have full authenticity as far as I'm concerned.
So you could, if you had that BOAP, it means that you were on the app. So there was a kind of like a brand loyalty there. So that's what they're exploring.
Right. Okay.
And then through their partnership with the Bored Ape Yacht Club, they had everyone who owned a Bored Ape and a mutant ape could have access to the NFT as well. And so this meant that they had, you'd log on, and because of your wallet address, which is the wallet, it's a public address that everyone that they can read. They know whether you've got the Bored Ape or they've got the POAP. Right. And they can, and then as soon as you sign to do the mint on mint day, well, actually they did it for, they pre-did the launch so that those people could go first, essentially. Yep. And then once that was exhausted, you got two people, you could buy two per wallet. And then everything that was left over went to a public mint, which means that anyone can go on and try and buy one. I actually did try and buy one myself and I didn't get through. So they ended up selling 30,000, which is quite a lot for an NFT drop. And they sold that within, like minutes. So I think that's probably the biggest NFT drop recently, I think, in terms of like its actual size and the sort of like the hype around it, I think.
Now, does the NFT, I know that some NFTs have, utility or functionality beyond, having the NFT and being able to use it in different ways online. They grant you access to further things, that kind of stuff. Was there anything like that wrapped up in the Adidas Originals drop?
Yeah, so we didn't really know exactly what the physical NFT was going to look like until it actually went live. So there was a lot of, it's a bit of a risk essentially. But yeah, you get access to the Adidas Originals Discord, which actually anyone can join. But there is like a closed off bit for NFT holders, and those NFT holders get to vote on the physical products that they will be able to buy. And then Adidas plan to release more physical products either directly to NFT holders, or they will get some sort of discount or pre-access. So it's very much, these are my customers and we're going to keep some loyalty. And this is something that, we've talked about before at the Soul Supplier, is that, before NFTs, I don't think brands really took loyalty seriously. And I think that was potentially one of the problems with the existing brand and customer relationship, is that, Adam's got 100 pairs of Nikes probably behind him, but right. Has Nike really offered him anything for being so loyal? Probably not. And I think that's kind of what the fundamental problem with the traditional consumer and brand relationship is, that there isn't really any reason, or you don't get rewarded for being a loyal customer. And I think that this is kind of a way where Adidas can kind of give something back to their loyal customers who have essentially invested in their project.
Right. So if I've got, just to kind of recap, if I was able to get one of these, I'm going to go back a step further. And this is actually as far as I got with it. I downloaded the Confirmed app, or did they put out a different one?
Is the Adidas Confirmed app, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And so then that gives me the proof of participation. And then...
only if you noticed it. Only if you noticed it at the bottom. It wasn't kind of like very obvious.
Okay, got it. Okay, so that's an in to potentially get on a whitelist. But either way, one way or another, I queue up to try to get in on the mint. And if I'm able to get one of the NFTs, one of the tokens, then that token gives me access to purchase a physical good related to the drop, but then also to have a voice, right? To potentially have a voice and vote on things down the line that the company's doing that are kind of rewarding me for my loyalty. Yeah. And that is interesting because there's...
No, sorry, go Karen.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that there's the Nike sneakers app for folks who don't know about it. This whole idea of lining up to get... So sneakers... as with many other goods, particularly sort of luxury goods or goods that are created with kind of a planned scarcity to them, they're dropped in sort of a limited edition run. There's a certain number, not all sneakers, we can get into the whole thing about how the sneaker industry functions, but there are certain sneakers that are dropped in limited batches. And in order to get them, you have to basically line up, whether in person or online. And so Nike created this whole, aside from their normal Nike app where, I go to buy my kids' shoes, there's the sneakers app, which is kind of more for the higher profile or more in demand sneakers that are being dropped. And there's been a whole lot of controversy over, who knows how long, you guys would know better than I would, about whether or not the sneakers app is fair to folks who, do you even have a chance if you're trying to get a pair of Dunks through the sneakers app? Is there stuff going on behind the scenes? There's all this stuff going on with bots getting in the way and sort of ruining the experience for the everyday person who's just trying to get a pair of cool sneakers they really want. And so I think it's really interesting, this point of, the NFTs maybe being a way to kind of reverse that and reward the loyalty, and for the brands to say, for Adidas to say to the folks who are proof of participation and picking up the NFTs, to say to them, we see you, we value you, and now we have a mechanism where, digitally making it really easy for us, low cost, easy for you, wherever you are in the world, you can now have a little bit of a say in what we're doing next.
Yeah,
I think it's a good way to compare this is, back in 2005, there was a really, really hype shoe. It was by Jeff Staple. It was the Nike SB Dunk Pigeon.
Talk about the riots. Talk about the riots.
Yeah, the riots were crazy. The police had to shut down all the stores. People who successfully purchased the shoes, like loads of them, were being followed home. And I think we can make parallels with like us queuing, like people queuing for that sneaker back in the day, and us queuing for like NFTs right now. If you think about it, we're kind of like at the same stage in that evolution. And look how far the sneaker industry has gone since. And like Pip mentioned earlier, people who successfully got the shoes, like they had to queue for hours and hours upon end. They were at risk of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And what did they get at the end? Like, they got a pair of shoes. But with NFTs, at least you get a say with physical products. At least the brand still knows that you're there. And I feel like there's so many ways you can compare the NFT industry now to what the sneaker industry was back in the early 90s. And I feel like a lot of people are only seeing it like surface level. When you think about the gaming industry, for example, we've been buying DLC, like downloadable content, since the early 2010s, and everyone's so happy to be buying like sneakers for their virtual character. But as soon as you talk about buying sneakers for a virtual character that is yourself, people begin to get up in arms about, like, that's so weird. Right. Why are you doing that? But like Rockstar Games, for example, they've been doing this since 2013 with GTA 5. They've been churning out tons and tons and tons of DLC, but people are still buying into it. But like, what is the real difference between a game DLC and NFTs at the moment?
Right. Do you think that this promise of interoperability isn't quite the right word, but being able to pick portability, being able to take your NFT and go from, I can use it as my, Twitter profile picture. I can then go over to a game in, Decentraland or whatever it is, and actually use, put it on my character who's playing the game, that kind of thing. Some of these big gaming companies, Rockstar, Epic, whoever it is, have these walled gardens, right? They already have Roblox, to use my example. They have Robux. They're doing all this stuff within their own ecosystem that it's working by all accounts. Users are using it and buying it up. Roblox is minting money, so to speak, by selling this stuff. What incentive is there for these big gaming companies to move from that walled garden they've created to buying into this NFT system where, the goods can be portable? Do you think that that's happening or going to happen? Or what do you think the future is with this idea of being able to take your NFTs and go from place to place and still have your same identity?
Well, so I think at the moment, I think it's one of the biggest problems, I think, with the way that NFTs are portrayed is that they are essentially considered like the interoperability is already here and it works. And it doesn't really work for any NFT, really.
Right.
So it will work, and that's the idea that the technology's there, the standard, the ER721 standard or whatever standard that they decide to make after that, or on whatever blockchain. They are working on interoperability, but at the moment they are essentially walled gardens. If you buy something on Sandbox, it doesn't necessarily translate out into another metaverse, and there aren't really that many metaverses anyway.
Sure.
So I think that the industry needs to be a little bit careful about how much they say that these assets are transferable, or you can definitely sell them, but they don't at the moment interact with other platforms. But I don't think that will be something that stays like this forever. It will happen, and that is the idea. But I think there's an simplification of the idea of why would you buy something in Fortnite when you could buy an NFT and you can sell it and you can hold it forever and then maybe use it somewhere else. It doesn't really work like that in practical yet.
But you think we're headed that way?
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Because and is that just because people like the idea and it's just gonna that's where the users are going to gravitate to, places where they can do that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think the reason that gaming companies have flirted with the idea of doing it, and I know that they've got huge backlash from a lot of the community, and I kind of don't really understand it, although I do understand it from a perspective of they're really trying to get rid of microtransactions. So they kind of see it as more of a, we're spending our money, and with interoperability being quite low at the minute, I can understand why they would kind of push back against that. But I think that one of the reasons why gaming companies are flirting with it is that the scalability at speed that NFTs can have for a whole ecosystem has been shown through OpenSea and various other platforms to be something to be exponential. And I think that is an avenue that people want to explore, because it can allow them to grow far quicker than any other traditional business model. And
let's back up a second, because I think there's something interesting there that I just want to unpack a little bit for myself, but for the audience too. What do you mean when you say the scalability at speed of NFTs?
So if you think about OpenSea, it's been going.
And for folks who might not know, OpenSea is the leading NFT marketplace.
Yeah, it's a little bit like the eBay of NFTs, but I guess a better,
that's what I was thinking, but I didn't want to say it because I figured I'd be wrong. So okay, cool.
a better comparison is probably Etsy, and it's kind of more of a suitable comparison. And if you think about Etsy's been going since around 2005, and OpenSea's been going from around 2017, and OpenSea's a private company, so we don't really have a lot of data on their how much money that is going through the protocol. But if you look at on-chain statistics, OpenSea's grown far bigger than Etsy within a much bigger time frame. So if you take that model, has been shown that if you give people something that they can have a hold on as an asset, that they will spend more than they would on a traditional business model, which is about buying and selling fees. And so this is kind of turning the whole business model on its head, because the idea is keep the average transaction that goes through OpenSea is far higher than any other platform that you'd consider similar from a Web 2 stance. And for people who don't know what Web 2 is, Web 2 would be I would just imagine it's anything like iTunes, Spotify, any platforms like eBay or Etsy. You could just class them as Web 2.
Right.
So if they're managing to grow at such a rate, and in such a quick time frame, by just having digital assets as physical as assets that can be tradable, and the average transaction value is much higher, then that's something that potentially new companies or games starting out, if they want to grow quickly, why would they go and choose the traditional model and spend all that time growing, becoming big, and getting all that power, when they can go down this route and maybe grow at a faster rate? because people have more of a reason to come back to the platform because they are financially invested into it,
Right. We're talking to Adam Chung and Pip McQuarrie from the Supplier. Adam is the editor-in-chief and Pip is the blockchain and cryptocurrency manager. Supplier is, especially after this conversation, I don't even want to, sneakers is not a bad word in any way, but I don't want to pigeonhole what you guys do as saying it's about sneakers, it's about streetwear or fashion, because we're getting into these interrelated things with gaming and the music industry and community building and all of these things that are kind of, it's almost just like a portal, to this culture that kind of transcends between online and offline. Pip, one of the articles that I mentioned earlier was something you wrote about NFTs in the music space. And there's an interesting thing here with this notion of the creator economy and ways for artists of all sorts, musicians, to make money, earn a living off of what they're doing. For a while now, there's been a lot of talk about the record industry dying and artists not being able to make money. For me, I think back to the late 90s, early 2000s when I had my first .com job. And, we had a super fast internet connection at the office. And so access to online music was all of a sudden a thing from that connection at the office. That was also the era of Napster and LimeWire and music pirating and all of that kind of stuff. And we've gotten to a point now where, Spotify, iTunes, streaming platforms are the distribution service of the day, but a lot of artists just can't make a living off of doing that. They're making a living off of touring. Certainly in the past couple of years, the touring industry was, shut down by COVID. And so now we're kind of at this moment where how are musicians making a living playing their music? NFTs might be a path forward. Do you want to speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, so in some respects, I think that if you explain NFTs to someone, it's much easier to explain NFTs as music than it is as, traditional JPEGs.
Okay.
And the reason that JPEGs really came about is because essentially they are the most easiest thing to make.
Sure.
So naturally, the NFT standard would use JPEGs to start off with because people can make them at such a bigger rate. But if you want to describe the relationship that the consumer has with the NFT and the creator, then I think music's a much better example. So you can create a music album or a track and sell it as an NFT. You can also create a Discord. You can sell 10 of those NFTs, or you can sell just one. And what you get from that is more of an intimate relationship with the artist. And because of the reason that you're not beholden to the low streaming fees, it's actually more valuable for the artist in terms of selling an NFT to sell an NFT rather than stream on Spotify. So the way to view NFTs, I guess, and the whole industry as a whole, is that what you're looking for is the quality of customer rather than the quantity of customers. And so, there's quite a few big examples of, artists that have like next to no earnings on Spotify, for instance, or iTunes, or Apple Music's called, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I said that was me. I'm dating myself. I'm thinking back to my 2000 days.
Yeah. But if you give someone a financial interest where they own something that they can potentially sell, then they're financially invested they're willing to pay more for one, and they're financially invested in the success of the artist. They engage more. They've got their attention is higher. And this has allowed, artists that I've definitely never heard of to earn, 10, 100 times more money selling their art as an NFT. So I think that
is that, not to interrupt you, but do you think that that's because we're in a bubble with NFTs and that's going to burst? And there were just some artists you've never heard of who sort of, I don't mean to disparage anybody, but kind of got lucky riding the NFT wave and, just speculative investments just being thrown into JPEGs and, oh, here's a music NFT. That's different. I'm going to put some money into that too. Or do you think it's something that's a sustainable model?
I think that maybe the money that music NFTs will eventually wane, for instance, as more and more people, come to the market. But I think that they are the streaming and then music NFTs, they can coexist,
Yeah.
If music NFTs is the ownership, we can still stream these NFTs, but the owners can still own them as the actual, digital asset. So I think that I wouldn't say it's a bubble at all, but I would say that it is something that might, the average price paid for one of these NFTs may go down a little bit, but I think we're a long way off that.
Right.
Really.
I mean, it's different. I guess I'm going to phrase this as a question. There's differences, but is there a similarity to, I'm thinking back when I used to pay, and I mean, this was in, $1990, $8 for a cassette tape, $12 for a CD. That's how I got my music, right? Yeah. Now, I pay whatever it is, $10 a month or $15 on a family plan, and I've got streaming access to all the music in the world. But I know folks, I'm not one of these folks, but I know folks who are into vinyl and collect vinyl. And so they'll use streaming platforms as like an audition kind of thing to, listen to different kind of music, and they hit something they really like, they'll go and spend the money to get the vinyl copy, which to me kind of, when you talked about the NFTs offering up a more intimate relationship between the creator and the listener, that kind of sparks something for me thinking about, having a physical object, or just the fact that I invested the money, even if it was only $10, it's still a bigger investment than just that monthly listening fee. But the Discord element, the community building element, I think brings something, bigger into this. Is that a big part of, I guess I'm wondering as anybody, as a music maker, as a sneaker company, as a somebody designing hoodies, whatever it is there now this added element that's kind of an opportunity, but also a responsibility to, if I really want to grow my community and build my brand, I've got to do something more than just put out the product. I've got to do things to cultivate a community, whether it's on Discord or somewhere else.
Yeah, I think these artists are struggling to get audiences and communities anyway. So right. I think that this is just a way that they can target much less people but earn a higher living. So right. I think that whatever industry you're in the future, it's going to be the power of, the community that your brand commands or that you're part of that's going to be, the new form of e-commerce. So
that quality of customer as opposed to quantity.
Yeah. You've got 100 willing buyers fully invested in you is much better than, 1,000 casual listeners, essentially.
Right. So when we were talking before we hit record, Pip, we were kind of bouncing ideas, topics back and forth. And one of the topics you added that we've kind of touched on a little bit here, but I think it's really interesting and worth kind of talking about specifically is what's happened over the past couple of years with what some folks, at least in the sort of professional circles I travel in, are calling, I guess a lot of people are calling the Great Resignation, and this move to people spending more of their time and work online. And it was, forced upon a lot of people by COVID. My perspective is a little skewed because I've spent most of my working life working remote, even back in the day, before it was easy on the internet. What I guess I'll turn it to you. And also we're talking, I'm in California in the United States. You're in London. Adam, you're in Ireland. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right. So, the perspectives may be a little bit different given our geographical locations. But what have you seen in the past couple of years and then sort of broadly with people spending more of their lives and particularly work lives online and how that's affecting notions of community and what people want from, kind of merging their physical and digital lives together, and just how that all plays into all of this stuff we're talking about with brand building and community and this notion of my identity and my online identity and how that all folds together.
Yeah, so I think this should be the case for the US as well. But what you have essentially people who have been asked to sit at home, and they've been either working from home or they've been off work,
Yeah.
And I think this has kind of created this idea of where people have kind of had this realization of actually how they want to work in the future, and the fact that they can, or most of the time, do most of their jobs working from home. There's been a real reluctance to go back to the office, and there's been a lot of industry changes. So you have a whole group of people, and it's kind of really quite tech focused, who have decided that they don't really need to or want to do the job that they're doing at the moment, and then they can leave and they can kind of work from home and do another job. And then you have the emergence of crypto and Web3, where there's money being put into so many different projects and protocols that you have a new industry that requires you can be anywhere. So that's why you've seen the industry grow at such a rate. And then particularly in London, I think that we've had what's called the collapse of the council estate, where, we don't really have, groups of people living in tower blocks anymore based on their, how much money they make or anything like that. Everybody's kind of more spread out.
Okay.
And so because everybody's more spread out, the sense of physical community is dying a little bit. Mm-hmm. And that's why the online community has become so important. So if you put that together, and also everybody's commuting to the same cities, like everybody must be commuting to the center of LA, or everybody's commuting to the center of London. There's no, that's where the real jobs are or were. So if you spread people around, then the natural idea is to move online. So the community, the idea of community, and has moved online, and so I think that's a big reason why NFT communities have become so big. And I think there's lots of other communities as well. Like the sneaker community is big on Discord, and people are gravitating to those types of social interactions. Even gaming, you could say that as well, rather than talking to their neighbor. I would say that most people I know now don't know much about their neighbors compared to my parents' generation and things like that. Right.
Well, and it makes sense, right? Like, I mean, I'm super lucky. My neighbors are cool. I lucked out. But as you're talking, I'm thinking about like, well, right, you online, even in the early days of text-based BBSs and everything, like it was a place where you could go find your people, especially if you were somewhere physically where you weren't surrounded by your people. You felt, for whatever reasons, like that. I don't fit in. These aren't my people. They're not the people I want to be with, whatever. And you could go online and find those people. And to your point, if city centers and physical communities are collapsing for various reasons, and COVID kind of accelerated that, and then this knowledge worker in particular move, and this isn't going to slow down anytime soon, to, hey, wait, I can do my work from wherever. COVID forced us into the situation where that's been proven. So not only do I not want to go to the office and hang out with y'all, but I'm going to move to somewhere else I want to be because I don't want to commute anymore. And then, bam, I'm going to look around online and, there's, God, I keep coming back to it's Air Max Day almost as we record this, so it's in my head. And but right, there's my folks who are all into Air Maxes, or there's my folks who are into Bored Apes or whatever it is, and you have that online, and it makes a lot of sense. I have to ask, just because it's a metaverse, kind of this overarching theme of this show I'm doing. Would you do these things strapped into a VR headset? Does that have appeal for you guys, or is it this I don't know, it's hard for me to imagine. This transition to an always online world has just happened, right? And I've given up in a lot of ways this thought of like, oh God, I should really put my phone down. I've been on my phone for so long, and it's like I pick it up again 3 minutes later, and that's kind of where we're at. VR offers the promise, at least, of these more immersive experiences where this idea of community could take on a different dimension and everything, but it comes with the price of being strapped into a headset. Do you guys do stuff in VR? Is there an appeal for you? Do you see appeal in the folks who you work with and who come to the Soul Supplier site and who you talk to in communities, or is that not even a thing?
I think personally, the idea of VR and having to have a headset, it's quite dated. Like when you think about the days of like Google Glass and stuff like that, and you had to wear this piece of like technology strapped to your head. Like Google tried to introduce that lifestyle, but nobody bought into it. But like, I can't speak for what will happen in the future. But right now, I feel like VR is at that really awkward stage of its life where nobody really wants to kind of dive into it just yet. And it doesn't help that VR headsets are so expensive to begin with.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. The opportunity cost is high for sure.
I think from a metaverse point of view, I think that there's a misconception that the metaverse is a something that you have to experience through in VR, and I think that it's one of those things that is it will be done through VR, but I think it could just happen through a screen, so I think that it may help some experiences, but most of the time people can just browse Decentraland or Sandbox just on their computer screen. I think it has the same immersive effect as well.
Right. Yeah.
Especially with how you're interacting with people and stuff like that. They are just basically, like social medias that are more advanced and complex in a way.
All right, we've been at this for a while, and I don't. Oh, I'm sorry, Adam. Go ahead.
It was just when you think about these types of experiences, like Facebook's Meta and everything like that. These things have been done before, but like PlayStation Home and Miiverse and things like that. But I guess they were just before their time, and I really do feel like this will probably come back, but without the virtual reality headset.
Right. There is the first episode of the pod. We were talking about this notion that Nenea Reeves, the guest, was talking about, this time in the future where, and I'm wearing, people can't see at home on the audio feed. You guys aren't wearing glasses. I'm wearing glasses. But, if my glasses could not only, do what they do now, but the vision correction could be adaptive, and then there could be data layered on top of that. I'm not sitting here yearning for data in my field of vision all the time, but it would also be a hard thing to not at least try. And then the slope gets slippery. And then, all of a sudden I'm in, who knows what I'm looking at when I'm out in the world? Is it the physical world, or is it whatever's happening with my glasses? Before I let you guys go, we've been at this for a while and it's awesome. And I could do this all day, but I want to respect your time here. Couple of things. One, are there other projects? We mentioned the Soul NFT Twitter channel. Are there other things that y'all are cooking up at the Soul Supplier that you want to talk about before we go? And then I wanted to touch at least briefly on the notion of environmental sustainability and the blockchain. So pick a lane, up to you guys. Where do you want to
go? We are working on a few things NFT related, but they haven't materialized enough that I could really talk about them at the minute. So watch this space.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm really excited about what we're trying to do.
It's an excuse for me to try to harangue you guys to come back on for an episode down the line. So
so with the sustainability in the blockchain, I think that any sort of argument or any sort of conversation around the environment and sustainability is definitely one to have, and it's not something that we should kind of shy away from. But I do feel like the argument is kind of not framed in the right way, and it's a little bit misleading. So there's loads of different things that go on for various different. For one, there's hundreds of different blockchains at the moment, and the one that really is quite energy intensive is Bitcoin and Ethereum essentially, but it's moving towards being proof of stake, which is going to be 99% less energy intensive. And then there's the other argument, which is that there's a difference between pollution and energy consumption, right? There is no reliable data that I've seen anyway that actually nails down exactly how much pollution crypto is doing in general. So I think that they do consume a lot of energy. And that's not something you can deny. But if you compare it to the banking sector, cloud computing, I think it's a different league. And, I think I speak for a lot of people when I say that I don't necessarily think that's a reason to not do these things. We have cloud computing, we have cars, we have the banking sector. But if, I don't think that because of how much energy they use, and they use far more than crypto do, then I don't think that there's a reason not to do them. I think that's more of a reason to kind of rethink, how they're done. The decentralization of the blockchain means that we don't actually really know who is where and who's doing what, and what they're doing. There's big mining farms, and there's actually companies that trade on the stock market who actually just make a living out of mining Bitcoin,
right.
And they're incentivized to use as little electricity as possible. So actually, miners are the ones who utilize hydroelectric power more than most other industries. But I think there's a lot of pressure on crypto, and I think it's sometimes used as a stick to beat crypto and NFTs. When in actual fact, I think the whole argument needs to be reframed a little bit. We should find better ways to use energy, and we should be using less energy as much as we can, rather than try and stifle innovation. It's something that's been in the news a lot. And I think that the original study was debunked a little bit, but it kind of went through the media circle, and it's been used as something to criticize Bitcoin.
Yeah, there's always a cost to anything you're doing in the physical world, but certainly when you're looking at innovation and trying to stand up a new technology, a new space, whatever it is, the startup costs are always higher. But as you said, definitely focusing the attention on ways to incentivize and otherwise make all the technology more energy efficient is, and also where the energy comes from, using clean energy as opposed to dirty energy, and so on. It's a big thing. It's an important thing right now. There are a lot of important things in the world right now, a lot of things on fire to be dealt with. So good enough. Adam, Pip, This has been fascinating conversation. I've certainly enjoyed it. I hope you guys have. But thank you for coming on the pod. I'll drop a few links now. We'll put these in the show notes. But for folks who want to check out the Soul Supplier, check out some of your work, the articles, other stuff, the Twitter feeds, where should they go?
Go to www.thesoulsupplier.co.uk.
All right.
And at the Soul NFTs, our new NFT Twitter. So yeah, we're really excited about it.
Excellent. Again, guys, thanks so much for taking the time. Also, it's evening where you are in the world, so extra appreciate you dipping into your personal time here, so to speak, to talk with me. But this has been great, and look forward to catching up again down the line when the Meta-Averse is connected to my 3D printer, and I can purchase an NFT that lets me output something that I can put on my feet and go flex at the playground where the dads hang out, because that's really all the flexing I do these days.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Noah.
All right, thanks again to Adam and Pip from the Soul Supplier for taking the time to join the pod. We'll be back on Thursday, as I said, this week's special 2-episode week, so stick around for that. Subscribe, tell a friend, tell a colleague, and if you're so inclined, rate and review us. We really appreciate it. It helps us grow. And of course, you can sign up for the newsletter, Meta-Averse.substack.com. Till next time, which is only 2 days away this week. My name is Noah Kravitz. We'll see you later.